Hello, everybody.
Howdy! Do you know how hard it was for me to keep this secret?
I'm surprised you did. He can never keep a secret.
Yes, friends, we have known for some time that this news article was going to come out and how damning it actually is to the Watchtower and Babble Crap Society.
Yeah, and, I did talk to Natalie. Thank you, Natalie, for an awesome article. And it's called Jehovah's Witnesses Accused of Selling Off Assets and Moving Cash to Avoid Sex Abuse Compensation.
See, that's why this video is entitled the way it is. Look at the reproach you brought on Jehovah's organization.
Yeah.
The cat's out of the bag. It's been out of the bag, but finally some serious news media coverage.
Yeah. Yep. And so we want to just mention a few things here of the article. And I wasn't able to access the actual article. I even tried to subscribe, for a month. It was only $5 to get the article. But I'm not in Australia, so I wasn't able to do that. So thank you so much for everybody who is sending screenshots. And I am going to put a link down below because there's actually a video on the Australian news talking about this investigation.
And the reason why a lot of people are sending us news, sending us screenshots, because it mentions Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. You guys know how long it's been since somebody's called me Mr. Brooks?
Yeah. All right. But I just do want to make a quick mention to everybody who has been working on this for quite a while now. And who would have thought when we started the property, nailing coffins, that, it would come to this.
Even back then there was some challenging issues regarding Kingdom Hall closures, congregations merging, in some of the ex-JW forums, it's like Mike and Kim, they don't know what they're talking about. You're never going to hurt Watchtower. They're too big, yada, 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 yada. And look at what this has all come down to.
Okay, so I'm going to read, like I said, I don't know if the screenshots are all in order, so it may kind of jump around a little bit, so I'm just going to pull up the screenshot and read what it says. Exclusive. Secretive Christian sect Jehovah's Witnesses has been accused of selling off assets and pushing cash offshore to avoid paying Australian child sex abuse victims. And it's just amazing of, everybody digging of all these thousands of charities. I mean, who knows how many charities and corporations and companies this organization has, and all their, this fighting. Bill Hahn, Apostate of Oz, he just did a video, and I had mentioned that the other day, and he's been digging into the charities there in Australia and how they're sending their money off to England, to those, all those companies and charities and commission. And then Ugly Watchtower, she just did a video, great find, sweetie, because the Kingdom Hall Trust used to be called the London Company of Kingdom Witnesses. Back in 1939 is when they started. So have they just been sitting there quietly, and now, Watchtower's going to use that company and turned it into the Kingdom Hall Trust. There's no telling how many corporations and charities they have. Their little greasy, grimy fingers in.
And as the article points out, it's so that they can avoid not, being part of the redress scheme, forking over some of the millions upon millions of dollars that they've extorted from Jehovah's Witnesses.
And my personal opinion, I don't think it's just in Australia they're trying to get out of paying this. We've talked about it between the two of us that we feel Watchtower's only way out of this now is to do what the Catholic Church is doing here in the United States, file bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy.
Because if they're not going to join their redress scheme to the tune of about $132 million, and now they're trying to, redistribute money and companies and corporations, and that's exactly what the Mormon Church did. And they're under investigation for doing this same thing Watchtower did.
Well, it's like Bill brought out in his video. If they join the redress scheme and hand over these millions of dedicated funds, then that's an admission of guilt, and this no longer becomes apostate-driven lies. Right, Brother Let?
Okay, going on with the article. For the first time, News Corp can expose the complex web of legal entities obscuring the true wealth and financial activities of the group, and that its charity status may be revoked if it does not sign up to the National Redress Scheme. The special investigation also reveals the failure of authorities to look into allegations by whistleblowers that JW may be hiding its money before the June 30th deadline to join the scheme. And there's been many whistleblowers, speaking out, and some even testified, in the redress hearings.
Yeah. See, and here again, just focusing on the first few words, a special investigation also reveals the failure of authorities to look into these allegations. And this is why I've said in previous videos, friends, and in particular you Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to lose the idea that the dual world power is the United States and Britain. No, the dual world power is religion and your governments. And this the reason why authorities fail to look into the Watchtower and Babel Craft Society, because they're both one and the same. They're working in cahoots. I mean, let's just face it. As far as the Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned in this religion, this is an experiment that's gone badly wrong in controlling a portion of the population.
Yeah. All right, back to the article. It has been named in the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse as having 1,800 potential victims and more than 1,000 alleged pedophiles. 537 of them self-confessed. But there is no evidence the sect referred any case to police. The authorities have really let us down. We need to focus on what is happening here in Australia. Ms. Caput told the committee in March, previous attempts to find the front door of the Jehovah's Witnesses have proved difficult. The Department of Social Security has attempted to negotiate with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Honorable Paul Fletcher, MP, was unable to find their front door. We can support you because we know how they mask their legal entities.
Right.
The governing body, which are really in charge and endorse the strategy they call theocratic warfare. We can help you by giving some examples of how this works and how they will be avoiding you. When contacted, Jehovah's Witnesses said, "We have considered your request. However, as your questions appear to be based on factual inaccuracies and incorrect assumptions, we respectfully decline to participate." News Corp asked for JW to state the inaccuracies and incorrect assumptions, but JW did not respond.
But how could it be inaccurate when you have one of the governing body members, Jeffrey Jackson, say, well, that appears so. See, right there, they admitted that the organization has a child abuse, a pedophilia problem. So how could these statements be inaccurate? They're not.
Exactly. News Corp can reveal, since the announcement of the Royal Commission on November 12, 2012, JW has reconstructed its legal charities and entities, grown from a handful of charities to 836 separate small basic religious charities, 766 active now, listed as registered on December 3, 2012 on the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission. Small basic religious charities are not required to provide financial information. And Bill, that's what he dug up, and he mentioned this in his video. They also appears to have had only one charity, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Australia, supplying financial reports to the ACNC. Reported to the ACNC $150 million in income for Watchtower since 2014. But see, if that's only one that has reported, and you have all these little ones that don't have to report, then how much money was given to these guys? And like Bill mentioned in his video, as long as they're under $1 million in assets or income, then they can remain small and don't have to even report. Sneaky jerks. Submitted financial reports to the ACNC for Watchtower showing almost $100 million from 2014 to 2019 allocated to donations and overseas aid. Made a loan of about $6 million with no short-term repayment plans to the UK International Bible Students Association, which we know is another one of their entities in England. Listed in UK IBSA 2015 accounts. Submitted Watchtower financial reports to the ACNC stating it is operating at a loss, $1.9 million deficit in 2019 and a $1.2 million in 2018 after making surpluses for previous 3 years. Been reported to the redress scheme by whistleblowers as allegedly selling off more than $24 million in related properties since 2012.
And that's where the Watchtower property tracker became so important to this journalist, because we have shown that Watchtower is selling off property. Well, just let's say we have more going out than we have coming in. That's an absolute lie. They've actually got more coming in because they're selling off all these kingdom halls.
And I want to thank Adam Phillips so much. Adam was not mentioned in the article, and I feel really bad about that because he's the one that designed this Watchtower property tracker and has been working so hard to get all this information put together for the rest of us. And so a big, huge thanks goes to him also, because he's put this in categories by areas and countries. And him and Laura both, they've done some graphs of different countries and all of this. And it was because of that property tracker, then it's like, okay, we can go through and just get just the Australian properties that have been sold or up for sale. So, we don't want to forget, and not mention him. Not declared in the past 6 years of Watchtower financial reports to the ACNC any potential financial implications from the redress scheme. So, to me, they're just sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. 6 years ago, Mr. and Ms. Brooks noticed global property sales for the JW had reached more than $2.5 billion US. That is 3.65 billion Australian dollars. With sudden spikes in jurisdictions where allegations of child sex abuse had arisen or inquiries were underway. Now, we had mentioned a while back when we were going through a whole stack of Pennsylvania kingdom halls that were up for sale, and we said, I wonder if they have a child abuse problem in this area, and that's why they're selling the kingdom halls. Well, that is what, the team discovered, is that the graph here shows that it pertains to where there's an investigation. Grand jury investigation in Pennsylvania, boom, kingdom halls start going up for sale in that area.
Yep.
The Watchtower exposed property sales tracking records compiled in Australia and the U.S. have been sent to the National Redress Scheme and also the U.S. Grand Jury investigation. Yes, now we can say that it's public, that information has been sent to them.
Wait a minute, the Watchtower exposed, is that a reference to our website?
That's our website! Yes. which is inquiring into whether the Jehovah's Witnesses repeatedly failed to report child sex abuse allegations to authorities. Now, also they have a picture of Bill Hahn and Stephen Unthank, and it says the SaySorry.org group told the redress scheme that JW had remained silent in relation to the redress scheme, refused to join the redress scheme, refused to meet with survivors, shunned child abuse victims within their own religion, refused to say sorry for holding the statistical record for having the most child abuse victims per membership number of all institutions within Australia.
Look at the reproach on Jehovah's name.
That is a shocking and appalling statement right there.
Yep.
And now I can see why Watchtower doesn't want to correct their factual inaccuracies.
Well, remember, long time ago, you heard it on this channel, that the child abuse problem is so bad in the Jehovah's Witnesses, it'll make the Catholic Church look like saints. Per capita, this article is saying the same very thing. They have a worse child abuse problem per capita than the Catholic Church. Look at the reproach on Jehovah's name.
Yeah. The last sentence on this screenshot says, refuse to adopt any Royal Commission recommendations. And we know they're very arrogant and nobody's going to tell us what to do.
And that's why they're selling off as much property as they can and shipping that money offshores. Sounds almost like what a money launderer would do.
No. The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ann Rouston, said from July, the government will name and shame institutions and consider financial sanctions such as revoking charitable status if they do not join the redress scheme. Ms. Caput believes it is unlikely any JW-linked organizations will voluntarily join the scheme, and victims may be forced to take civil action or class action, but there may be no assets left. Lawyer Peter Kelso, whose firm specializes in acting for victims of abuse, fears there's only one way for an outcome, and that is to sue JW. It is unlikely that the JWs will offer a settlement and the people will be forced to go to the courts, and it may be something they can't afford to do, said Mr. Kelso.
See, once an article like this gets into the hands of the Australian John Q. public, the door-to-door preaching work is done. Because John Q. public in Australia and everywhere else that this article is now being shared, everybody has hard evidence in their hands who and what Jehovah's Witnesses are. They are not these nice, clean people that go from door to door and say, have you heard the good news of the kingdom? What you should be saying, have you heard the horrible reproach they brought on Jehovah's name and his organization because of the child abuse?
Yeah, going on with the article. Ms. Caput recently supplied property sales data to the Joint Select Committee on Implementation of the National Redress Scheme, which she says shows more than $24 million in sales by JW-linked entities since the Royal Commission was announced, and that sales were accelerating in recent years. But the committee have advised they have no power to investigate or to refer the information for investigation. And that's where they have failed horribly.
Yep.
Not only have they, JW, not joined the redress scheme, but they appear to be ensuring they can say they don't have enough money for any redress, says Ms. Caput. And that is true. That is true. Because they're going to do just like the Catholic Church did here in the U.S. Oh, we don't have the money to pay all these victims. They file bankruptcy.
And we've said that before, because here again, Kim and I for a very, very long time have looked at this religion not as a religion, but as a business. And their business model has failed them now.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just have a picture here of the Jehovah's Witness child sex abuse claims. 1,800 alleged victims of abuse and 1,006 potential perpetrators and 537 self-confessed perpetrators. And then they have a breakdown by, whether it's Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, the whole, I think those are called provinces. Then at the very bottom it says, they have refused to adopt any Royal Commission recommendations. They have called for a raft of recommendations, including the tax concessions be revoked for all charitable status of all the JW-related charities, a compliance audit for all JW members and entities working with children, implement a redress scheme to pay abuse claimants, and then pursue institutions for payment. The JW organizations be subject to scrutiny, audit, and investigation by ACIS, the ACNC, the AFP, and other federal or state law enforcement agencies. Done by Natalie O'Brien. Thank you, Natalie, for an awesome article. My goodness. My goodness. Now, before I forget, I want to thank Sean for letting me know that the New Zealand Charity Commission is starting to gear up now for their investigation, and so they are asking for any abuse survivors in New Zealand to please get in contact with them. And I'm going to put the link down below to this article. It's called Abuse Survivors Urge Others to Come Forward as Royal Commission of Inquiry Investigates Faith-Based Care. And then they have a number and email at the bottom that you can contact them. And it says anyone who wants to contact the Royal Commission can do so by calling 0800-222-727 or by contacting by email contact@abuseincare.co.nz.
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Right, New Zealand. So keep that in mind, friends.
If you're in New Zealand and, you would like to come forward and tell, your story, they are looking for survivors.
Yeah. See, the thing is, friends, is over the decades, the Jehovah's Witnesses have always been scrutinized by those outside of Watchtower. For a very, very, very long time, other religions have tried to stop the Jehovah's Witnesses door knocking, and we all know that, they took it to the Supreme Court, fought for their right. Their right to go door knocking is guaranteed. And no matter how many religiously based, scathing articles that have been written about Jehovah's Witnesses over the years, none of them's really been able to stick, because in most countries and in the world that we live in, they're free to do what they want religiously. But that does not include abusing children. And this is the proverbial noose around Watchtower's neck, and the hangman's handle is on that lever that springs the door open.
Yeah.
And we need to keep in mind, friends, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you're going to go after Watchtower, the only way you're going to have a measure of success is to go after them from a corporation, from a business. They have a 501c3, which means they are governed by the state or the province that they actually are operating in. They are a business. Religion is and has always been a business. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. Now, back in the 1800s, and I believe it's still in publication to this very day, there was a paper, magazine, booklet, whatever you want to call it, called the Herald of Gospel Liberty. And they came out every week back in the 1800s. And it was just news of Christian news from all over. Now, I want to thank Atlantis for sending this to me, because I have proof that this is not a new thing of the organization trying to move assets around and hide, because there's evidence that Russell tried to do this. And when you read the divorce court papers from the Russell's divorce back in the early 1900s, you will see that he was trying to pull a fast one and get away with not paying her alimony. And he was doing the same thing,
Yep.
claiming poverty and that he was penniless, that he couldn't afford to pay her. Well, this paper caught him on that one. And like I said, you can read it in the court documents also. But this is from, it looks like volume 136. And I don't see a date on this page. I only have the one page. But thank you, Atlantis, very much for sending me this, because you're absolutely right. This is nothing new. Watchtower has been doing this from the very beginning. All right. Presbyterian of the South. The character of Pastor Russell, the inventor of millennial dawnism, has been exposed in such a way as to challenge the self-respect of every one of his followers and require that they repudiate his blind leadership. The Brooklyn Eagle some time ago exposed the fraudulent accounts of meetings held by him in foreign lands which were sent out from his publishing house. And you can Google the Brooklyn Eagle versus Russell online and get those old newspaper articles. We mentioned it in a video we did a while back with Russell and the gold mine. It was a big thing back then. Later, the same paper published this statement of the results of court proceedings which involved the pastor's reputation. The Court of Common Pleas, to which Mrs. Russell appealed for alimony, denied Pastor Russell's plea that he was penniless. The court heard evidence showing that he had transferred property worth $317,000 to the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society, of which he is the president. Referring to one transaction involving a sheriff's sale of property worth $20,000 for less than $200, the court said, the purpose of this whole transaction was to deprive the wife of her dower interest and was a fraud upon her. The evidence produced against him in the alimony case was that he accumulated a fortune through stock speculation and donations from his followers, who are taught to believe that the millennium is due in October 1914.
Snare and a racket, people. Snare and a racket.
So you can see this is nothing new that Watchtower has done. It's nothing new for any religion or organization to do this. This is what the Mormon Church and the Catholic Church are doing. They're, shuffling assets and companies and charities around so that they don't have to pay the abuse survivors.
That's right.
Infuriating. Infuriating. Now, before we sign off, I just want to mention that, my personal opinion that with what's going on in the world right now, whoever hires or brings busload of people, rioters, in to a town or area to destroy property and hurt people, they are criminals. And whoever brings these people in, hires them, brings them in by bus, they should be arrested and held responsible for the damage these people do also. And with that being said, because there's been several comments, and it's like, no, I was not condoning what is going on now, the criminal acts going on now. I was talking about peaceful marches back in the 1960s. And that being said, there aren't hundreds or dozens or thousands of races on this planet. There's one race, the human race. And as long as these powers to be get us all to fight over stuff like this, we're going to be too distracted to realize who's really trying to divide us.
The Jabbalonians.
Yeah, exactly.
See, and that's it. As long as they can continue to manipulate us through fear, they are going to win. They become fearful when they recognize that we, as human beings, have lost our fear of them. This is a huge power struggle going on, if you will, between good and evil. and hopefully good is going to win over, and hopefully we can all grow from this experience and recognize, and I mean fully recognize, what the control mechanism is. And it's a book. We all have it in our homes. That's the playbook. Because this dividing of people goes all the way back to that first sacrifice.
So that being said, I just wanted to say that because I do feel we are all one race. It doesn't matter what the color, pigment of your skin is. We all bleed red. And, as long as they can keep us fighting and distracted, and it even comes down to the XJW community, even within our small community. If they're what Mike calls controlled opposition.
Controlled opposition.
If they can come in here and if they can keep you distracted, you're so busy focused on them and fighting with them that you're not going after Watchtower. You're not helping those leaving.
That's right.
You're not being a support to those who are leaving. So many leaving right now and hurting and traumatized. Our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends. The 12-year-old little JW boy just committed suicide. His aunt, I saw her post on Reddit, was just heartbreaking. Those are the things we should be fighting, not one another. That's why we try our best just to ignore the controlled opposition, because we know they're there just to distract, get attention to themselves, trying to divide and conquer.
Well, that's what it is. Distract, divide, and conquer.
Get their own agenda across. See, they will use people to get their agenda across. So, please, everybody, we're at a vital point right now to where I think this article just kicked Watchtower in the cojones. And, thank you so much to all of you who have been sending us property listings, addresses, photos of Kingdom Halls up for sale, because you are part of this team also.
That's right.
Without you, we wouldn't have been able to get all this information on that Watchtower property tracker. So don't downplay what you have done to help this.
And keep in mind, friends, that it came at a very timely point in Australian history, because Watchtower has until the end of June to put up or shut up, and we know what they're going to do. They are not going to help the victims. They're not going to. Why? Because the new system is just around the corner, and Jehovah will wipe that from your memory. We all got fed that line of crap, didn't we? All of us did. Just wait till the new system. Leave it in Jehovah's hands. Nope.
Exactly. So we were very happy to see this article, and we were just ecstatic to be a part of it. And so, thank you everybody for watching and for your help. And we're not done with this property tracker. I've got lists, pages and pages of lists of more addresses to check out of Kingdom Halls that we suspect are up for sale or have been sold. And if you have any information for this, you can contact us at kimmyambrooks@gmail.com. And for those of you in New Zealand, contact the New Zealand Charity Commission that is going to be, get going here pretty soon. And then, of course, there's always the UK Commission, the IICSA, I believe, is the acronym for that one. And hopefully once this COVID thing is over and done with, they can, get more going on that. And then we're anxious to hear, too, about the grand jury investigation in Pennsylvania and this country.
That's right. Because they got sent some information, too.
Yeah, as the article says, we know, and like he says, it was so hard not to say anything because we knew what was going on behind the scenes and all of this, and it was like so difficult to keep up, and then so difficult to do videos still and pretend nothing was going on in the background. It was very difficult. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and we hope you have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye.